Welcome back to the deep dive. We've got a really fascinating one today because it starts with a scenario that I think is becoming more and more common.
Oh, yeah.
And honestly, it's pretty terrifying for a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a medical
I
mystery.
love a good mystery. What's the setup?
Okay, so picture this. You decide you're going to get really serious about your health. You're doing everything right, and I mean like strictly by the book.
Mm-hmm.
You adopt a low-calorie lifestyle. Let's say you're dialed in at, I don't know, around 1,400 calories a day.
Mm-hmm.
You're not touching junk food. The sugar is gone. You're at a healthy weight, maybe even lost a few pounds. You feel great.
Sounds like the absolute model of health. I mean, that's what we're all told to strive for.
Exactly. But then you go for your annual checkup. You get the blood work back. You open the envelope
Mhm.
or, you get that notification on your phone. And there it is.
For red text.
The red text. Immediate panic.
Yeah.
Your LDL cholesterol's flag is high.
And that feeling,
Hmm?
it's usually confusion first, right? And then it's followed pretty quickly by genuine fear.
It feels like a total betrayal.
Yeah.
You're sitting there thinking, how? How can I have bad cholesterol when I'm not eating any bad food?
I'm not eating grease. I'm barely eating anything.
Right. It feels like your biology is flunking the test, even though you studied all night for it.
That reaction is so understandable. And it feels like a betrayal because, well, that's the narrative we've been fed for 40, maybe 50 years. You know, fat in the diet equals fat in the blood equals a heart attack.
Sure.
But today, we're going to look at a source that just challenges that entire panic response. We're going to look at a unified interpretation of these markers specifically for people in this low-calorie state.
And this is where it gets really interesting for me. The mission of this deep dive isn't just to say, hey, don't worry. It's to explain why the numbers look the way they do.
Exactly.
The central thesis here is that most of our modern medical standards,
Yeah.
the charts, the reference ranges, that scary red text, they're all built on one fundamental assumption.
And that assumption is that the patient is living in a state of chronic excess.
Chronic excess.
That is the key right there. The medical model assumes you are overeating, overconsuming, living in a surplus. It assumes the default human is just drowning in calories.
But the source we're looking at argues that when you flip your lifestyle, when you go to low calorie,
The meaning of those markers, especially LDL, it doesn't just change. It often reverses completely.
wait, so you're saying high isn't always bad? That feels like a dangerous thing to say, given everything we hear about heart disease.
I know it sounds so counterintuitive, but in this specific context, high numbers might not be a sign of sickness or, clogged pipes.
So what do they sign of?
They might actually be a sign of a very, very smart resource management strategy by your body. We're going to dive into the biology, the resource management, and why your body does what it does when you restrict calories.
Okay, let's unpack this carefully,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't want anyone thinking we're saying, go eat burgers and ignore your doctor.
No, absolutely not. Context is everything.
We need to set the scene. So who exactly is the baseline for this theory? This isn't for everyone, right?
Right. This is crucial. We are talking about a very specific observed baseline condition. According to the source, this applies to someone with long-term low-calorie intake around that 1,400 kilocal a day mark we mentioned.
Okay.
They have no obesity, no chronic overconsumption, no high-sugar diet.
So not someone hitting the drive-thru every night and not someone who is metabolically broken to begin with.
Far from it. And here's the kicker. Looking at that blood panel,
Yeah.
their triglycerides are normal, maybe even low.
Okay.
Their HDL, the so-called good cholesterol, is often modest, sometimes a little low, but their LDL is numerically high.
And that's the contradiction that drives people crazy. Conventional wisdom says LDL comes from excess. But this profile suggests the body is producing this LDL itself.
Uh-huh.
It's endogenous.
Yes. And that forces us to ask a really big question. If the body is making it, and we know the body is this incredibly sophisticated survival machine that hates wasting energy.
Why is it doing that?
Right. Is it trying to give you a heart attack, or is it doing something else entirely?
It seems, I don't know, unlikely the body would self-sabotage when resources are scarce. Evolution usually weeds out that kind of stupidity.
You would think so.
So let's get into the mechanics. The source talks about something called biological asymmetry. It sounds like a physics term. What does that mean for our metabolism?
It's a fascinating concept, and it's really the intellectual core of this whole argument. The idea is that the body does not treat having too much and having too little as equal problems.
Okay.
They are not symmetrical risks.
Break that down for me, because I always think of balance as being the goal.
Let's look at a surplus state first. When you have abundant resources, lots of food, lots of energy coming in, it's actually pretty cheap for the body to handle.
Cheap. How is surplus cheap? Usually we think of obesity as this huge health crisis. Isn't that a massive burden?
Long term, yes, of course it's a burden, but
Mm,
in the immediate metabolic moment, handling extra energy is kind of easy. If you have excess energy, you can just burn it off. You fidget more, your body temp goes up a little,
right.
your nervous system just sort of ramps up what we call sympathetic tone. It's basically just idling the engine faster to burn off the fuel.
So it's like
Oh,
if I overfill my car's gas tank, I can just drive around the block a few times to burn it off.
yeah.
It's wasteful, sure, but it's not a crisis.
Exactly. Disposal, oxidation, it's all fairly low cost for the machinery. But now, contrast that with a deficiency state.
Mm.
When resources are insufficient, that is expensive. That is destabilizing.
Expensive how?
Well, think about what happens when you're actually starving. It stresses the autonomic nervous system. Your body has to panic. It spikes cortisol to break down your own muscle tissue just to find energy to keep your brain working. It messes with your blood glucose, your whole endocrine system, your hormones. They have to scramble to adjust everything.
Okay, that paints a vivid picture. So surplus is just work a little harder, but deficiency is sound the alarms, emergency mode.
It's a full-blown crisis. Recovery from a deficit requires a massive systemic adjustment. So the survival rule, and this is the bold claim from the source, is that the body prioritizes avoiding deficiency over eliminating surplus.
That just makes intuitive sense.
Yeah.
I like the analogy of a pantry. If my pantry is overflowing with food, it's annoying, it's cluttered, I might trip over a can of soup. But if my pantry is completely empty,
You starve.
right, that's a disaster.
That's it. So it's better to have a slightly cluttered pantry, or in this case, slightly higher blood markers, than to risk running out completely.
So when you're in a long-term low-calorie state, your body realizes, hey, we aren't getting a flood of resources every few hours. So it switches gears. It starts playing defense.
Exactly. It prioritizes maintenance, it creates a buffer, and part of that defense strategy involves this very misunderstood character, LDL.
LDL really needs a PR manager because we've been calling it bad cholesterol for so long. It's basically the villain of the medical world.
It really is a branding issue. It's unfortunate because, without it, you'd be dead.
Okay, so let's rebrand it.
Right.
What actually is LDL? If we strip away the toxic label, what's it doing in there?
The source is very clear on this. LDL is not a toxin. It is a transport system.
A delivery truck.
Think of it as a delivery truck. And what is it delivering? Essential materials. It carries cell membrane components, literally the walls of your cells. It carries the insulation for your nerves, myelin. It carries the precursors for your steroid hormones.
Wait, hold on. So things like testosterone, estrogen, cortisol, they need cholesterol.
They're built from it.
Yeah.
They're literally made of the stuff LDL is carrying around. And here's the reality check. 70 to 80% of the cholesterol in your blood is produced by your liver. It's not from what you eat.
So your body makes it because it needs it.
It needs it. Dietary intake is secondary.
So in this low-calorie context, when we see high LDL, it's not gunk clogging the pipes. It's more like building materials.
Exactly. It represents indispensable structural resources. Imagine you're building a house, but because you're on a tight budget, the supply trucks only come once a month.
Okay.
When a truck finally arrives with a load of bricks, do you throw them away because you have too many sitting there right now?
No, of course not. You stack them up in the driveway. You hoard them because you have no idea if the next truck is coming next week or next month.
Precisely. You hold on to them because replacing them is costly when intake is low. The body is effectively saying, I can't afford to synthesize this from scratch again later, so I'm going to keep it in circulation just in case.
The body is hoarding bricks. That leads to the mechanism of how the numbers go up. Because if I'm not eating it, and I'm not using it right away,
Right.
why is it just floating around in my blood? Why doesn't the liver just, pull it back in?
This is where we get into the weeds of cellular biology a little, but we can stick with the brick analogy. In your body, the loading docks for these bricks are called receptors. When a cell needs cholesterol, it opens the dock, it puts out a receptor, and it grabs an LDL particle.
Okay.
But in a low-calorie, stable state, your cells aren't turning over as fast, you aren't growing rapidly, the construction site is quiet.
So the loading docks are closed.
Mostly, yeah. So the trucks, the LDL, have nowhere to offload their cargo.
Right. Receptor-mediated uptake slows down.
And at the same time, the clearance rate, how fast the liver pulls the trucks off the road, that also slows down.
Why would the liver slow down clearance? Shouldn't it want to clean up the traffic?
Because rapid clearance is unnecessary. Usually you need to clear LDL fast because there's a flood of food coming in, new trucks arriving every hour, but here there is no flood, so the system just relaxes.
The source uses a phrase I really love here. It says this elevation represents retention, not accumulation.
That is the key distinction. Accumulation is when garbage piles up because the system is broken. Retention is when you keep something valuable because you might need it later.
It's insurance, not surplus.
Think about the use it or lose it logic. The source argues if it's high, you can use it. If it's low, you must disturb the system to make more. Keeping LDL slightly elevated is safe. It's a low metabolic cost, but letting it drop too low, that risks a deficit. That risks not having enough material to repair a cell wall or make a stress hormone if you suddenly get sick or injured.
So the body keeps a buffer. It's a rainy day fund.
Precisely.
Okay, I'm with you on the logic.
Okay.
But usually when a doctor looks at your blood work, they're not just looking at LDL, they're looking at the whole panel. We mentioned triglycerides and HDL earlier. How do they fit into this low-calorie defensive profile?
This is where the context becomes, I think, undeniable. If you only look at LDL, you might panic. But look at the triglycerides.
Right.
In this profile, they are normal. Often they're very low.
And that's good, right? But remind us, what are triglycerides in this context?
Think of triglycerides as the cash in your wallet. It's immediate energy. If you eat a donut, your triglycerides spike because you have a lot of cash floating around that you haven't spent yet.
Got it.
If your triglycerides are low, it means you are spending your cash. You're burning your energy. It proves there is no energy surplus. It proves there is no insulin overdrive trying to store fat.
So it confirms the LDL elevation isn't because I just ate a pizza. It proves the high number isn't from excess input.
Right. It confirms the LDL is there for a completely different reason.
Okay, but then there's HDL, the good cholesterol. We're always told we want that number high. High is good. But in this profile, the person eating 1,400 calories HDL is often low. That scares people almost as much as the high LDL.
It does, but again, we have to look at function. What does HDL actually do? It's the reverse transport system. It's the cleanup crew.
The garbage trucks.
The garbage trucks. Its job is to go around, pick up excess cholesterol from the tissues, and bring it back to the liver to be recycled or disposed of. Now, just follow the logic. If you are living a low-calorie, low-turnover lifestyle, is there a lot of excess to clean up?
No. We just established that the body is retaining everything.
Right.
We're using all the bricks.
Exactly. Is there a lot of garbage on the streets?
No.
So if there's no garbage, do you need a massive fleet of garbage trucks driving around 24/7?
No. You send the drivers home, you minimize the fleet to save money.
That's it. The source calls this functional minimization. It is not a broken system. The transport volume drops because there's less traffic. Low HDL in this specific context isn't a sign of disease. It's a sign of efficiency.
Wow. That's a huge shift in perspective. You see a low number and you think deficiency or broken, but it's actually just lack of waste.
Correct. Why spend energy building garbage trucks when you don't have any garbage?
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
Because I can just hear the listeners and, frankly, a lot of doctors screaming at their speakers right now.
Go for it.
They're saying, but wait, what about our ancestors? Don't hunter-gatherers have incredibly low LDL? Isn't that the natural human state?
That is the classic counter-argument. And, it's factually true. Hunter-gatherer populations often have very low LDL.
So if it's natural for them, shouldn't we be aiming for that?
Not necessarily. We cannot look at their numbers without looking at their context. What's the life of a hunter-gatherer like compared to our 1,400-calorie dieters sitting at a desk?
Well, they're moving a lot more.
A lot more. Their physical activity levels are extremely high. They have rapid lipid utilization. They are burning fat for fuel constantly because they're walking 10 miles a day. And critically, they often have high infectious burdens.
Meaning they're sick more often.
They have parasites, bacteria, infections. Their immune systems are constantly active. And guess what the immune system uses to fight infection?
Let me guess. Cholesterol.
LDL specifically. LDL can actually bind to pathogens and neutralize them. So their LDL is low because they're burning through it as fast as they make it. It's an incredibly high turnover state.
So their LDL is low because of immediate usage, not because they're aiming for a low number on a chart.
Exactly. We are sedentary modern humans eating 1,400 calories. We have low turnover. We cannot just mimic their numbers without their context.
Okay, objection number 2, and this is the big one. LDL causes heart disease. That's medical dogma. My doctor didn't say high LDL is efficient. He said high LDL causes plaque. Are we saying that's just wrong?
We aren't saying the association is wrong, we are saying it's conditional. The source clarifies that LDL causes cardiovascular disease is true primarily under conditions of high inflammation and metabolic damage.
The damage is the key.
Think of your arteries like a road. If the road is damaged, it's cracked, it's got potholes, then the delivery trucks, the LDL, they get stuck, they pile up, they cause accidents. That's plaque.
And what damages the road in the first place?
High sugar, high insulin, smoking, high blood pressure, all the things associated with a surplus lifestyle.
But a 1,400-calorie person
Has pristine roads, they have low inflammation, low insulin, so the trucks just drive by, they circulate, waiting to deliver their bricks, but they don't crash.
So the lower is always better rule.
It is really only true in surplus-based environments. If you are overeating and inflamed, then yes, lower is probably better. Get some trucks off the damaged road before they crash. But in a low-calorie, healthy environment, that rule just falls apart.
And just to cap off the objections, what about the idea that low calorie should lower LDL? I feel like I've heard that if you lose weight, your cholesterol drops.
In the short term, yes, it often does. If you fast for a week, it might drop. But the source points out that long-term adaptation often reverses this. The body realizes, oh, this isn't just a short diet, this is life now. And to preserve resources, it bumps the numbers back up. It enters that retention mode we talked about.
It's amazing how adaptable we are. The body's always listening, isn't it?
It is. It's constantly optimizing for survival based on the input you give it.
So let's bring this all home. What does this all mean for that person holding the envelope with the red text? They're scared, but maybe they don't need to be. The big aha moment here seems to be that we are judging a famine-adapted body by the rules of a feast-adapted world.
That is the perfect summary. In a low-calorie lifestyle, moderately elevated LDL is a rational survival strategy. It is not a malfunction. It is your body doing exactly what it evolved to do to keep you alive and functioning when resources are tight.
And the source mentions we should be looking at other things. If LDL isn't the panic button in this context, what should we care about?
The bigger picture. Health arises from context, not from an isolated number. In this profile, you should look at the markers that show systemic health. Are your inflammation markers low? Is your glycemic stability, your blood sugar steady? And honestly, how do you feel?
Subjective energy really matters.
A huge amount. If you feel good, your brain is sharp, your inflammation is low, and your sugar is stable. The LDL is likely just doing its job. It's part of a healthy system, not a harbinger of doom.
It's about looking at the whole human, not just the one isolated metric. It's tough, though, because that red text is designed to scare us.
It is, but you have to remember, the reference ranges on those charts are averages based on a population that is, unfortunately, largely metabolically unhealthy. You are stepping outside the average.
I want to leave the listener with a final thought from the source. It's a bit provocative, but it really stuck with me, this idea of the cost of health. The source says, the body keeps LDL not because it wants to harm you, but because losing it would be too expensive.
It's a powerful reframing. It shifts the body from being an enemy to being a prudent investor.
It really is. So here's the question for you to mull over today. If your body is smart enough to keep you alive on fewer calories, smart enough to regulate your temperature and your heartbeat and your breathing without you even thinking about it, is it possible that it's also smart enough to know exactly how much cholesterol it needs to keep running? Maybe, just maybe, the body isn't wrong. Maybe the chart is.
That's the question worth asking.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll see you next time.